China is doubling down on the trade war with the US. Just today, they announced that they are levying 34% on tariffs on US goods. So the US is retaliated with 104% on Chinese goods. So we are just at the beginning of a massive trade war between the two giants on the world economy.
Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to today's panel discussion on one of the most significant economic conflict of our time, the China-US trade war. Over the past several years, the world's two largest economies have been locked in complex dispute involving tariffs, technology, intellectual property, and ideological influence. The trade war has reshaped the world supply chains, affecting markets worldwide, and raised important questions about the future of international trade and cooperation. Today, our distinguished panel, Shumba, Makombe, will dive into the causes, consequences, and the potential resolution for the ongoing war. Welcome to our channel. Shumba, maswera sei?
Taswera misha, maswera sei?
Taswera zvedu isusu. Vamakombe maswera sei?
Taswera zvina. Maswera sei?
Taswera sei. Kwenyu kumaraini kwengu kwakamira sei kwaShumba?
Kuno kuri nani chose. The weather was fine, everyone appeared happy, everyone was on the streets. I think the drinking halls were populated today. I saw people enjoying themselves in the city center. Of course, wherever there's beer, there bound to be some fights. So the police ended up being busy as well.
Vamakombe kwenyu padyo nenhandare yendege kwengu kwakamira sei? Dzenge dzichisumuka nekumhare?
It was okay. Everything was fine. Just like Shumba said, the regular drinking halls were populated, and zvanga zvichifaya.
Kuno kuEast London kwenge zuva renge ririko, I think ma-drinking halls and ma-parks anga akati zarei nevanhu vachingofamba vachiona, and I think sekutaura kwandakaita nezuro kuti feri inenge yakuita zvekutonyanyotoremerwa chaizvo manje. I think kuti udarike feri nawo wakutoda kuita time an hour plus to your journey, because the Silver Tunnel and Blackcore Tunnel dzakubhadharwa. Saka the only free cross takuenda kunana East London kutienda kunana West London kuyangova ferry, otherwise Dartford uko kunobhadharwa, kuSilver and Blackcore Tunnel kuri kubhadharwa. And ndenge ndichitaurawo hangu nevamwe vanhu kubasa kwa zviri kubata vanhu vakawanda. Saka ndo zvinge zviri kuEast London. Saka Shumba, let's get into our discussion of today. The trade war between China and the US. Are the gloves off now?
Yeah, so it seems that way. So I think China feels it's being humiliated. So after the announcements of the tariffs by the president of America, China retaliated with a 34% on U.S. goods. And then Trump came out and said, if you don't resign to those, that 34%, we're gonna add an additional 50%. So China was not willing to give ground, and as a result, that additional 50% was added. So we're looking at China having the being hit by a collective 104% of tariffs, and it's quite interesting, really. And the world markets are not taking this lightly. So we can see from the S&P that it fell further after the announcements of an additional 50% hit, the additional 50% tariff on Chinese goods. So this is the world where we are. Listening to I think one of the best guy that I listened to, he predicted this last year, saying we are getting into a sea change environment. He says the period, because he's more into investments, and his name is Mark Howard. He says the past decade decade from 2009 up until now, the interest rates were so suppressed that it was really artificial. And he said somehow the world sort of sorts itself out. And he said that anomaly now is being corrected. And he said the way it's being corrected is because we're going to go into a period where people think inflation is going to go away, but there'll be a lot of problems that will arise on the economic scene that will make those inflationary pressures persist. So he calls this a sea change in how investors are gonna look at this time. So these are the problems that we face today. But the major problem is you have big elephants, two big elephants going head to head with each other, and the result is not going to be pretty. I think China feels it's being humiliated, and whilst the US, you know how Trump operates, he feels like it's a soap opera, or it's something to look up. So it's also doubling down. So how it will end, we'll just wait and see.
And I think this is what Trump said on his True Social platform. He says China issued a retaliatory tariff of 34% on top of their already record-setting tariffs, non-monetary tariffs, illegal subsidization of companies, and massive long-term currency manipulation, despite my warning that any country that retaliates against the US by issuing additional tariffs above and beyond their already existing long-term tariffs, abuse of our nation will be immediately met with new and substantially higher tariffs over and above those initially set. Therefore, if China does not withdraw its 34% increase above their already long-term trading abuse by tomorrow, April 8, which is today, 2025, the United States will impose additional tariffs on China of 50% effective April 9th, which is tomorrow.
Tomorrow, yeah.
Additionally, all talks with China concerning their requested meetings with us will be terminated. Negotiations with other countries which They've also requested the meetings will begin taking place immediately. Thank you for your attention to this matter.
Yeah, so the emperor has spoken. He's expecting that everyone comes on a bended knee to negotiate their what they're gonna offer on the table. So obviously, what he's looking for is for everyone to come onto the table and offer more than just the removal of tariffs for US goods, but a lot more other, including investments into America. So what he's looking for is bringing jobs into America. And I was laughing today because I saw a video. I think the Chinese were using humor as well to fight back. So if you just play the Twitter that I sent you of
On the Twitter.
yeah, that was for the jobs that are being brought back to America.
Okay.
I think the two major personalities, China and America, have unexplained agenda which they need to resolve backstage. And these unexplained agenda could have been sorted out by the past governments in both countries. But now that we have the likes of Trump, who believes he can rule the world, an opportunity has emerged for him to intensify the economic conflict which started sometime 2018. The trade war has been around since around about 2018, and this is gradually turning into a retaliatory ground or platform where different entities are coming up with their offers as regards what they want. It's no longer a negotiation table. It's about what one country can offer and what the other country can't offer, or who can better the offer in any presenting situation. So until such time we have a change of government in the United States, we are going to have an intensified conflict between China and the USA. Both parties are not innocent in this game because they're involved in other significant activities across Africa and other parts of the world. And the term tariffs has replaced the term sanctions. So very few people are going to be talking about sanctions. A lot of people are going to be talking about tariffs.
Yeah.
So tariffs have been weaponized.
Yeah.
So
let's play the video that he was suggesting for us to.
Yeah, so that was just mocking that some of the jobs you are talking about, I think it's wishful thinking Americans will do them, to be honest. And it also, you know, the amount of you paying workers in Asia obviously is significantly lower to an American worker. So which means who's gonna pay for a 9,000 iPhone if it's produced in America. So those are some of the things that are gonna play into the picture. So yeah, like what Mr. Makombe said, there's a lot involved, I think. But for me, it's the game that empires play, because some of those issues that we think should have been solved, empires, they don't solve them because it's a trump card for them to use whenever they want. So what you'll find is, like the Taiwan issue, America uses it for its own purpose, to say whenever they feel they can threaten China using Taiwan. And then China knows Taiwan is being used as a tool. There's nothing about Taiwan being democratic or what. It's just a tool, a convenient tool. Because if you look at global strategists who knows these things, they say the problem with Taiwan is not only about democracy in Taiwan, but it's also the last island chain before you start getting into North America. So once China takes that Taiwan, it comes back into China's fold. Then it's an open sea all the way to Hawaii. So it's an existential threat to America itself. So it cannot afford to lose Taiwan, because it's using it as a buffer to say, before China comes towards us, it has to pass through Taiwan first, you see. So these are the games that I always say empires, they play all the time, and they are not willing to solve them because they are serving a particular purpose.
You're very right. I mean, it's a case of, I've always asked, what constitutes democracy? What is democracy? A lot of people say democracy evolves around government of the people, by the people, for the people. But do people actually rule anything? Do they make decisions?
Exactly.
Yeah, they do not. Other people make rules on behalf of the people. So when we have these conflicting issues come on board, the whole chaos becomes a marketable platform whereby people facilitate different issues like the post-COVID trade dynamics, trade deficits, and all that. That chaos is essential to keep the things, to keep the world moving. Other than that, then nothing happens.
And moreover, I always say, if you look at the end of the British Empire, this was a similar environment, because the cause of the First and Second World War was the rise of Germany, challenging the hegemonic control of the British Empire. So that's exactly where we are. Because if you look, when America thought China, it would take them centuries before they can challenge their power. But in manufacturing, even they say in shipping, China is producing, one port in China produces all the ships that US can produce in a year.
Yeah.
One port in China, one ship building port in China is doing that within a year, but it's producing equivalent ships that the US can produce in a year. So you can see that that challenge that America is facing now, to say, unless we contain China and we leave them to continue the path they are on, we are in terrible problems, because very soon China will take over, will eat our pie basically, and will run the world instead of us. And for empires, this is something that they don't tolerate. They always want to be at the top of the food chain.
But then you must remember, Africa has got to get its house in order before we can start thinking about consuming the pie the Chinese are currently feasting on. Something has to happen big time.
Yeah, but
Africa has to start creating borderless entities. We have to start We have to focus on accountability. We have to change our way of politics, the way we do politics, corruption.
But don't you think it's too late, Mr. Makombe?
Too late for what?
No, because if you look at the dynamics we have now,
Yeah.
In our discussion yesterday, I said this is a time now we are being coerced to choose sides. So African nations are going to be forced to choose either to go with China or with the US. And you are basically betting that the US will win or China will win. If you bet on the wrong horse, then you are in trouble.
Shumba, if we bet and take the American side, what do you think will happen?
I think
these are the very same people who are deporting our people.
Yeah.
These are the very same, the very entities who are going out there and say, okay, we can facilitate this, we can facilitate that. They're making choices in our countries. And then we vote for them and allow them to facilitate whatever they want to facilitate. We're giving them an open checkbook. What for?
Of course, that's the challenge we have, isn't it? And even China, if China wins as well, we don't know what, because there are no permanent friends in geopolitics.
Yeah, there are no permanent friends. Remember, we've got this young man in Burkina Faso. He's changing the world, basically. We can technically do the same.
Exactly.
If we get our house in order, we can have our own currency. We've got the minerals and everything. It's a case of us getting structured in a particular format to ensure that continuity of process happens. But for now, it's not happening because we've subscribed to corrupt entities, and everybody wants to have a bit of money here and there. So the process of mindset regeneration is not going to be easy, but that's the way to go.
Yeah. I totally agree with you, because it's not going to be easy. Because even you look at China, I've always said, unless you come to a point where you take these things seriously, because when we talk of China, if you are caught doing corruption in China, your fate, isn't it?
Yeah. Your fate is done.
When you read the history of this country, the UK in particular, you read the history of the Bank of England. Some of the things we see today, we think they came through democracy. It was not even democracy. It was capital punishment that infused that sense of accountability. Because when I was reading the history of the Bank of England, across the road from the Bank of England, there were gallows. Yeah? So if you were caught, if even a pound, you stole a pound, you'd go hanging, and your colleagues would see you kicking and screaming, being taken to the gallows. So already, now when we come here, you see the systems working, there's accountability. You are quick to presume that all that accountability came through democracy. It was
no. There's no such thing as democracy. I've always argued.
Okay. So the thing that a person understands is punishment.
Yeah.
Right. So now the big brothers are fighting. What should we be preoccupied doing now as
should
African
be getting
nations?
our house in order.
This is what Mr. Makombe
all
said.
Those Chinese who are impregnating our sisters in Africa for their own, labor force. We should start with those first, because they're all they define as jobs that can be done by other people. I don't get it, because we are in a position to create those jobs and work in these factories and so on. We have enough labor force to facilitate that.
We had that, Mr. Makombe. Yeah. Some of us, I think you have heard me make this argument before. I worked in freight. There was a
Right.
time I was facilitating exports for Caps United, Caps the pharmaceutical company.
Yeah.
It had started to export out of Zimbabwe.
Yeah.
But then when you get government involved and they don't even have a direction of where they want to take the company, the whole thing came crashing down. It's
Then we
not
need a
like we
corruption
didn't have
conference
that
there.
capacity.
We need a corruption conference. Let's
Yeah.
start talking about what is what, and let's attack the elephant in the house. Otherwise, I mean, this is not going to go away, is it?
Yeah. So it's not like our people cannot do. We had, I remember we had Hyundai assembling cars in
Yeah.
in
Willow.
Mutare,
Yeah.
and then we had
BMC.
Willowville assembling cars. We had that capacity. It was just a matter of time before we started producing our own homegrown car.
Yeah.
And if you look at the Rhodesian government, they already had some cars they were producing locally. You know, you go to Manchester Museum, if you get a chance to come down here to Manchester, if you go to the military museum here in Manchester, you had that, that little car they used to use in war, Rhodesian war.
All right. Yeah.
Yeah, it was made by the Rhodesians.
So
They have it on display in the Manchester Military Museum.
And even myself, I've got an experience where I worked for is Kafka cables. There's still a machine that is still running twinning cable, which was designed and produced in Zimbabwe by Metal Box. But if you go there today, they don't even have a record to say they produced such a machine there.
Maybe we should go back to basics, guys.
No, we need to go back to basics.
Yeah. Because, I mean, I don't know how, but, I mean, we have to tackle the system as it is.
Yeah, the elephant in the room is politics. Unless we fix our politics, we'll just go around in a merry-go-round, really.
Our politics.
From an engineering perspective, a country is not sustainable unless you produce what is called capital equipment. So in Africa, we don't produce capital equipment. We tend to go and buy the capital equipment to produce what we want. If we want to produce a tissue, we go to China, buy the machine that then produces the tissue for us. Then we say we are developing. We need to have a capacity to develop a machine that produces we must be able to produce the machine that produces the machine that then produce the whatever end product we need. As long as we are buying the capital equipment to produce whatever we are producing.
So are we saying engineers that cannot create machines? Are we saying that?
I can't say that, because if you collect the data across the world, the engineers from Zimbabwe, they are involved in a lot of these companies wherever you go.
So it's a case of harnessing those engineers back to Zimbabwe, regroup them and say, look, guys, let's try and facilitate this. Let's try and create this, and so on. So we need another conference whereby we can start talking this language and walk the walk. Because so far it's not happening. Everybody's selling bananas.
Yeah, everybody's selling bananas. Everybody's hustling and
Absolutely. So we need to start thinking about creating structures that work. As long as we don't do that, like Shumba said, the big animal in the house is politics.
Yeah, because as long as your institutions are not working, forget about everything else. Because, level of accountability, I think we know the Zimbabwe we grew up, right? The level of accountability that was there. It's what made things work. Because
Yes.
all humans are inherently corrupt. That's why we're talking of China shooting corrupt people. Here
Yeah.
in the UK, what keeps you accountable is the systems are robust, the institutions are robust. There's no way you're gonna say, oh, yeah, public funds you divert, they'll pick it up, because there are so many checks and balances that will trace back where things went wrong. But now with our systems, because the state has been hollowed out, we have those loopholes whereby people just take advantage, and there are no consequences as well.
I think you're looking for the word corruption. Because that's what it is.
So I think in any country, I think there was in is it in Germany? You don't become a minister of industry, or if you don't have the technical know-how of the industry that we are in. And even if you look at the Smith regime, when you become a minister of agriculture, you must have a farm that is producing. But I think we have tended to have career politicians.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and not only that, if you look at their parliaments, the Rhodesian parliament, you must have been someone who does something. Either you are a farmer, you are a businessman,
Yeah.
you are
Some philanthropy of some sort.
yeah, you have to have something that you are involved in that is significant for you to be to. But now, what criteria do we use for someone getting into parliament? Some people don't even know what they are in there for.
Yeah. Because I remember in the then Rhodesia, I know a lot of people don't want to talk about this. We used to have a guy called John Avery, who was a train driver. He ended up as an MP.
Yeah, and it's not only that, Mr. Makombe. You look at China. You know, you cannot become president in China if you've not been mayor of a major metropolitan city. Xi Jinping, the current president, he was mayor of, I think, Shanghai.
Yeah.
So, because they take it that if you can be able to run a major metropolitan area like Shanghai or Beijing, then you can be able to manage 1.4 billion people. You can't just pick someone from the street to run 1.4 billion people. It's impossible. And you look at the services in Harare now, we go through those problems because of corruption and putting into office people we haven't got any track record of.
We don't have means-tested people.
Yeah.
People are in a position to
because they have not done the
structures.
job before. They just find by luck that they are in that position.
Yeah.
I was on Twitter the other day. They were debating about those flats in Mbari. What are they called? Matererini. Matapi and Matererini. I said,
yeah.
Someone is talking. Oh, there's no water. It's dirty. I say, in actual fact, those flats should have been condemned a long time ago.
Yeah.
Bulldozed down. How can you consider those things are still fit for human dwelling? It just shows the mediocrity that we live in our country, you know.
Yeah.
So there are some thoughts that has been thrown by Ramakombe. We need a corruption conference.
Yeah. We need significant people, all commoners, to come together and share their ideas on the current situation as regards corruption. Because every stupid person has got a story to tell. Let's have everybody's story on the table, and then we focus on a problem-solving approach. I know it may sound far-fetched, but I mean, that will be a starting point. We need to debate on it first to see what is what and who is what, and then we break the ice. Once we have managed to break the ice, the next port of call would be, how do we solve it? I always dwell on the how, why, what, we, when equation. So that's all we got to do. Because for now, we're just pinpointing at each other. This one stole that one, this one gave this one a car, and so on.
Yeah, and you know, we are.
And what's your take on this one, Shumba? Corruption conference, bringing the significant others on this platform.
Yeah, we could do a corruption conference. I think a corruption conference will help the young generation.
It will break the ice.
Yeah,
they've got a lot to tell. They've got a lot to say.
Yeah, because one thing I see as very disturbing when we have these debates, especially with my fellow Zimbabweans, is they appeal to the moral sentiments to say, if we are in power, you shouldn't steal. If we are, I always say, no, you got it wrong, the other way around. You don't appeal to the moral sentiments of people to do the right thing. That's where institutions come in. Yeah. Institutions should hold people to account, not to appeal to my moral judgments. Because my moral judgment will tell me my kids have got no school fees.
Yeah.
And then if I've got access to the till, I'm just going to grab and give my kids, you know?
Yeah, because we have a deficit of I concept. We don't know what is what in terms of who we are trying to address. Because everybody is customized around what they want. It's like me.
Yeah.
And when it becomes me, the next phase would be, you're going to take things that don't belong to you, intentionally or unintentionally. So we need to start thinking about what constitutes the I concept, what constitutes the povo we liaise with.
I think, Mr. Makombe, we have seen instances where you even think in this country, we've got this organization that approves medication for use in hospitals. Sometimes they'll say, oh, this medication is too expensive, or it hasn't had significant medical trials yet.
Yeah.
But people are begging, oh, it works. In America, it's working. Why can't we have it? But because of those standards, they will stick to their guns and say no. You can even take to them, they've been taken to court and they've won court cases.
Yeah, there's a drug called Respirodon.
Yeah. And they win court cases based because it's an institution. They can't bend the rules to just fit maybe one individual.
But we don't subscribe to crowd politics. That's why we don't even subscribe to crowdfunding. That's why we are poor. We don't understand the mechanics of that. We don't understand the social currency that will facilitate a way forward in numbers. So, I mean, as long as we don't understand the mechanics of numbers, then nothing happens. I've always said to people, when they can't count. And I know a lot of people won't agree with me because they focus on one. One is the principal primary number. I mean, as regards a lot of people, I want to do this. One. It's never two, because if it becomes two, it becomes too crowded.
I know what you mean. I know what you mean. I've always advocated that, to say the strength of Western economies, especially, I've always said, if you look at Zimbabwe itself, when it was Rhodesia, first it was colonized by a company.
Yeah.
You look at Cecil John Rhodes, he used to come to London to raise money from shareholders in the BSAC, which was the British South African company which colonized Rhodesia.
Yeah.
So unless you come in numbers to do something.
But we don't understand numbers, do we? We can't count.
But I could not say that because I can see some Zimbabweans doing things, honestly.
They are,
I've seen,
but then
I've seen, not
numbers,
individually,
we are not there.
Mr. Makombe, not individually. I've started to seeing Zimbabweans come together to do things collectively.
Yes.
Yeah. And some of them are doing amazing things in this country.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah. So when you come collectively, you put your little 100 pounds together, let's do this. You'll be amazed.
I think it's happening, but not at the rate at which we want. But I've
got a personal experience. I had this friend of mine, they came together to just before COVID. They found this stand they wanted to buy, but they were buying it to build a church. So it was near the railways. So they contributed, and then they raised about 54,000 pounds.
Wow.
Yeah. And then they bought that piece of land. When they approached the council now to build the church, they were told the planning permission doesn't allow them. Now, do you know how much that land is worth?
No, I don't.
Over 300,000 pounds.
Oh, there you go there.
Yeah. So now they are deciding to sell it and share the proceeds.
No, don't sell.
Yeah. But my point is now, what I'm trying to say is, if it was an individual trying to raise that 54,000, it might not work. But because they came collectively, like you are saying, when you come collectively and you bring each other together, you've got the same mindset, you can achieve great things.
I agree. Yeah, absolutely. It will agree. It will happen, yes. Yeah. Maybe we should start thinking about that kind of thing. Those kind of projects.
Right. We need to start putting our discussion to a dovetail to an end. Yeah. I think we have heard Shumba talk about this big brothers fighting, and it has brought us to talk about our own situation, tailing it to Zimbabwe. And I think one thing that we have all identified as a need is to address the situations that we have in our countries, to put as Mr. Makombe has put it, we need to be putting our house in order, while also the big brothers are fighting over there. And one of the key things to talk about is to fix corruption. And when we have fixed corruption, then we can then begin to look at the professions that we have in our country to really be effective. And the one in point is the engineering professions to come together to try to see how can they put our design and production of capital goods, and finally, so that we can be self-reliant in terms of what we produce. I know when we got independence, Rhodesia was 75 self-reliant. In other words, they were producing 75% of the things they consume in Rhodesia. They only needed to import 25%, and they could do without. But at the moment, I don't know what percentage we are producing. It might be less than 10%. So how do we turn the tables? So I think before we give to a close, give each and one of us a final opportunity to give your closing remarks. You may want to say, talk to the authorities, to talk to young people, to talk to the general public, or you may want to speak to the two big brothers who are fighting. Shumba.
Yeah, I would just say in conclusion, I think what builds a nation is strong institutions, rule of law, and like Boss T said, defining our politics. Because some of the political parties we have, especially within our country, some are not driven by any ideology. If you ask them, what's your ideology? Because when you've got Trump, those are right wingers. Do we have the equivalence in Zimbabwe to say this is a right wing party, this is a left wing party? We don't. People are just going for elections because of the sound bites of the leaders. We really need to start having political parties that have got an ideology, that are selling something to the Zimbabwean masses, what they are going to do for the country in the next 20, 30, 50, and 100 years. What's your plan? And your plan should, when you come up with your plan, it should be reflected by the leadership you've got. It's no use to say we want to do this for the country, but you don't have the competence in place. So that's what I would say about fixing our country. And the final point I've got to say, this is like me looking at the Zimbabwean landscape and our politicians. I think the next president we need in Zimbabwe ought to be an engineer. I'm sorry, Mr. Makombe, we've done with lawyers, accountants. We're done with lawyers, accountants, and all these other people. We need an engineer. It might be a mechanical, electrical. We just need an engineer for us to look at things in a different manner. I think that's all I've got to say tonight.
Okay, I'm going to keep it very short and sweet. I think the next president we have should be an effective technocrat that answers Shumba. Right. The Big Brother fight should not be associated with an African fight. Big brothers have deficits they need to settle among themselves. While they are engaged in this massive fight, which is being fought through sanctions, tariffs, and whatever, we should be getting our house in order. Let's take that opportunity to regroup and create structures that are pro us. Big Brother is not going to come back to us and say, right, the fight is over, let's talk. That's not going to happen. So while there is chaos, let's focus on how best we can resolve our systems. Corruption, poor governance, local governance, and things like that. This is the time for us to do that. Hard it may be, we have to start adopting the equation of how we are going to do it, when we are going to do it, where we are going to do it, and what we are going to do. That's my take on this.
Thank you very much, Mr. Makombe and Shumba. Thank you, viewers, for tuning into Champions Network TV and listening to this interesting discussion. In Shona, we say Chirim Saka Saka Chino Shinzguira. So those who have got the ears have heard. We are going to be on this platform every day, same time. And so until tomorrow, good night for tonight.
Good night, guys.
Good night.